Christian Livingstone here, and I'm on another project that will be involving my kitchen. You see, I just entered my apartment here, and I have certain traffic patterns and wear patterns in this apartment. I've been here about 6 months, and it's carpet throughout. It's got kitchen carpet and some plush carpet otherwise, but there's no tile at all. And there's a certain area that I perch in the kitchen rather than this dining table here. That it's just a cross traffic pattern, and I've given it a lot of wear already in only the 6 months. So I'm going to tile that whole. It's a galley kitchen style. I'm going to come all the way out here because this is where I kind of perch, right here up at this counter just for my sipping coffee and stuff. And rather than come all the way out here to the table, it just seems needless and senseless to, you know, bring food across carpeted areas. It's just not my idea of a smart layout. So what I'm going to do is come out here with some metal from about right here and come diagonally across here at 45 degrees. On these old school tiles, and I'll show you, it's color through. What it looks like on top looks like underneath. So if you scarred it with a knife or something, it's not so noticeable. And that's what I like, a durable finish, because these newer tiles and strip style tiles, they can be scarred and marred, and I just don't like that. So I'm going old school with some old tiles. I haven't done tiles like this stuff in about 40 years, but years ago I used to lay a little carpet as a teenager. And here's the material that's arrived to me. I bought it all on the internet, virtually all tax-free, and made the world a little better place in that way by keeping the money in the productive people's hands and not to those extortion-paid bureaucrats. I'm just going to do this indoor project for a change. No welding, no mower stuff, no e-bike stuff. I'm going to focus in this interior space of mine. Maybe get in touch with my inner designing woman. A repressed inner designing woman. Is that sexist to say that? To say that maybe women are more inclined to doing interior decorating than men? Nah, they are. They gravitate towards that vocation more than men, I'm sure. Although there's homosexuals who do that too. They gravitate toward the interior decorating. Didn't Oprah Winfrey used to have a little friend of hers that was an interior decorating, and he'd come on her show? Yeah. So, they gravitate towards that too, but I'm not a homosexual, although maybe that's homophobic to say I'm not one of those. I don't think so, because they, like women do, tend to gravitate in that direction more. But I'm going to channel, I'm going to allow myself to go there a little bit and have some fun with it, because it's a little bit of a stretch for me, and I'm allowing myself to go there, and I've even come up with the schema for this tile, and I'm going with the checkerboard style, and in a diagonal checkerboard. And on the small areas where the tile's going to go in the entry and in the bathroom, I'm going to just stick with the 1 square foot and alternate them diagonally, checkerboard, black and white pretty much. They've got little flecks in them too. Hey, look at that. I got lucky. There's no tile glued to the foundation underneath this kitchen carpet. It pulls up real easy. It's got some foam backing, and that comes off real easy and smooth, so I don't have to worry about the underlayment finish. There is this one seam right here, but I've got some of that underlayment patch that will be just the perfect thing to fill that in. So, but I'm going to try to be clever too. In the kitchen area where there's more width, I think I can put 4 of the same color tiles together, the black, to have diagonal, a big line down into the kitchen with the black diamond shapes, you know, with the outer portions white. But then as it turns into a hallway, I'm going to clock it so that there's the larger 4 squares of white going down the hallway. So I think it's going to have a kind of a clever, interesting schema to it. I'm going to change the metal on that. It won't just be a squared off corner. It will come out on 2 points and then cross over at this same 45 degree. So and then the tiles will be diagonal pointed in this direction. So that'll be pretty cool, I think, too. Down this hallway it changed up. The carpet was here, if you'll remember, and strangely it's this padding, the glue for the padding is stickier than the rest. And you know, all this foam backing came off well, and it's smooth. But this is gooey, and you know, this is what I've been using generally, but you know, it's not really doing that well. So the sharper blade is getting this pretty good. And I'm not going to do the whole center section. It's smooth enough, and but in those just around the sides is where I'm going to have to go around. But I did pick this up, use this little thing here. It's some kind of a power paint stripper, and it just really wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. I mean, it works, but I don't know, just manually scraping seems to do as well. And here's some of this joint compound going down at these nail holes and on this seam for the concrete here. Pretty easy. I could probably use this wider one on this. This is a little wider. So. And, I'm going to just knock the top of that off just to shear off any irregularity. I think the tile will tolerate everything here though, but wherever I put this patch, I gave it a once over. That's about 60 grit paper under there, so it's not fine. It didn't leave any grooves either. Otherwise, I got some more materials. You can see these nails for the metal. And I actually broke down and got the actual tool for that. It's got the magnetic head for setting those nails. You got to be real careful. You get those babies right on, because you know, if you flub it with a hammer, you can damage the metal and it looks bad. And otherwise, I was thinking about just using my chisel and turn it upside down and hammering it at the top there and just sharpen the edge. But then I thought, no, I need all the precision and accuracy I can get with this. So this tool cost about 22 bucks by itself, and had about $8 or $9 shipping on top of that. So, and this knife, it's kind of like a linoleum knife. It's got the nice hook. So that's how I believe I'll be cutting most of the tiles. And there's some coving here. There's some areas under these cabinets you can see that will need them, because they were glued. The carpet ran up here and it was glued to it, and it just left gooey, ugly glue marks. So it's getting coving under there. I'm going to try to keep the coving off of these areas. I just, I don't know, I don't want to gooey up this surface either. So if I'm lucky, I'll be able to shoehorn the tiles under here. Same with most of the molding too. There's a lot of gappage under there. So rather than you know, pull all of the molding off, I'm going to just see how it goes. Not, you know, taking it off, because you know, sometimes it can strip the paint edges. You know, that molding was done pretty nicely, so I'm going to see if I can shoehorn under it. Otherwise, I believe the surface is smooth enough. You see I got my lines drawn, the crisscross there, so I can have my Masonic geometry, so to speak, working for me. I'm not a Mason, of course, I'm just joking. So, yeah, I believe I'll be laying some tiles tonight. Here we get ready to begin, and this is the pattern I'm going for. You see it's the 4 tiles per color, diagonal, and the pattern, I'm running the black with the flecks going in one direction and the white going in the opposite. I just think that's the better way to go, and these tiles are color through tiles. You know, they look pretty much the same on both sides, but I believe there is an upside and a downside. The one that's got a little more sheen on it undoubtedly had a slight finish put on it, so I'm going to try to keep that correct and keep the upside up. I think on these black ones, some of them, it almost has a little red streak that alerts you to that fact. The white ones, not so much. They look closer to the same on both sides. Matter of fact, I can't even tell on this one. Anyway, nothing's glued down yet. I've got a quart of glue, and I've got another quart coming. I should probably show you how I'm scoring this. Sometimes I do it inside this slot, sometimes outside using this line. It depends on how high it rides up, but then I'll come out here and nip the ends a little bit, run it up a few times, and get a good score on it. I don't do it over the tile. I did it over here before I buttered that little spot up. But then I'll take the edge of this, set it right up to about where the scoring is, and just break it. And it gives a fairly good finish. This isn't, you know, something you'd want to butt up to another tile, but around the edges, no problem. Okay, here's some glue going down. I really don't have a technique for applying the glue perfected, but I'm tending to put a thin layer on it. Anyway, here's that cut at 45 degrees. And, you know, it's just going to be handy that that's what most of this stuff is going to be. But shoehorning the molding up like that, let's see if we get lucky here. It seems to be going pretty good. And there it is. Without, you know, taking this out and doing anything like that. Okay, and here's another piece I'm going to shoehorn into here, but that one corner is under the carpet, and it's a little difficult to get at to measure against, so I'm just using this little framing square here to not try to reference from the corner, but to reference from the center line. And you see that fits right in there, so I can just measure from the center line and go over a quarter of an inch, because I'm going to get under that molding like I did here. It's become quite easy to do that, but I'll reference a center line right here by using this. I'll reference the center and then just measure over from here rather than from down at this corner, because that corner is buried under there, and it's just not so good. So I'm discovering you know, little tricks and stuff, but it's basically just with these 2 squares. My technique now has become to just get these tips started on both sides. Down below you can see it's starting to break away, and just do a little at a time until you can feel it. And I run that knife down these lines. See? But anyway, yeah, pushing the breakaway piece down, you know, not going back and forth, maybe a little at the beginning, but you know, down and away is what I'm doing. And it's working. And again, here's an actual S, 2 intersecting lines or points, corners, 3 lines actually, 2 corners, but you know, you don't have to break it out as an S. This is the piece that's going to go in here, so I can just come across here, and this is all excess. So that will reduce this back to an L break, but I haven't even scored the line. But on this portion here, I'll just keep going and score and break that one corner off, and then I'll come down into this one L, because breaking that off in an S would be virtually impossible. And I mean, if you had a heat gun, you could probably do it, but I'm not doing heat guns. And so I believe this has been the most challenging tile so far. Probably will be the most challenging. I don't have a whole lot left to do, but this one was a little trick bag, because you know, it's got a butt up to here and butt up to here, and I didn't want to leave any gap, and so I don't have to use any caulking. And there's plenty of room to tuck under this baseboard, but this upright molding here is butted right down to the ground, so I pulled it away, and the staples pulled through. These were stapled down, and these I think were nail gun. But yeah, it's if the molding on the side here at the base was stapled too, that was good that I didn't pull those out, because those staples pull through in some cases. In this case it did, but I think I'll just glue that back down and be done with that. But it's a good fit, as you'll see here. And there's the fit up. But yeah, so that one was challenging. That took me about 15 minutes. I used the knife to scrape and scalp out some of these little areas. And this is how I'm starting it, with the outside corner edge. I put as good a cut as I could with a utility knife, but I always knew it would be you know, kind of an unfinished look right at that corner, because I'm not going down this side with this stuff. I just I want to keep this like it is, so I might put a dab of I don't know, some dark brown caulking or something in there to kind of clean that little lip there. Okay, and there it is. I pulled it off and or at least rolled it back about halfway. In this section it was a little waverly, so you know, I drew it down and then started to roll it back down with a little more tension under here, and it took that waverly tendency away. So I learned something new. I don't know if I've ever put in any of this stuff before. I think I have, but it wasn't this self-adhesive thin type. This type might have that tendency, so you know, you got to draw it down and keep some tension under that little lip there, so it doesn't have that tendency to ride up just a bit in a spot here and there and cause that little waverly look. But now it looks nice and straight under there now. Okay, I decided to back it up even a little further than I initially thought I might want to have it right up to the door closure, because this carpet has a seam right at that point, so I want to go behind it. When I cut this carpet, I want it on a fresh piece of carpet without a little frayed seam under there. You see how they put these together? They use an iron and this gluey tape, and there's the seam, and it would have been right about at that point. I want to make my cut right about here, so I backed it up a little, and I'm using this tape to hold it in place and keep everything in alignment. And I dabbed a little bit of glue at each spot between the nail spots. So I think I'm ready to start nailing. And here's that magnetic nail setter. I kicked out a little extra just to have this to be more handy for me. Okay, there it is, stripped away. And sure enough, that old seam is beyond the metal, so I placed a nice sharp new blade in the knife here, and I'll just use the metal as a guide over the top here. It's a kind of a delicate cut, but you know, I've done it many times, like 40 years ago, and I'm 59 now, so it's been quite a while. But normally with new carpet, we would take a kicker and stretch the carpet up and have it set down on those grippy teeth or strip tack. But this carpet has already been stretched. You know, it's still tacked down on the sides, so I don't believe it needs any kick in. I don't have access to a kicker, and I'm not going to buy one or rent one. So you know, I'm just going to trust the process that it's fine. I mean, I could try to pull it and devise some pseudo kicker device, but I don't think it's necessary at all. So I'm going to go ahead and start this cut. You can see if I flub it or not. I think I'm going to start right here where that seam is already, you know, separated. I'll just cut in this way. And I'll use this because I can visually see kind of where I'm going. You know, there's the metal, and I'll just begin to cut right into it. And then I'll come back and slit the rest. Oh, geez, this whole thing is just pulling off. Let's just do that. Okay, we got about an inch to take off. I'm going to come in kind of diagonally until I find that metal channel and use it as a guide. Guide me. Okay, there I am. I'm on it. I'm outside of it there. I want to get right inside of it. There. Yep, careful to keep the knife kind of right up against the inside of that metal. Probably can't see it now, but that's what it's looking like. So far, so good. Okay, there it is. Some dimpling, some edge from the edge of this thing, but I think better than most. Let me get the door up on there and see how it looks. And here's the hallway, all done. The metal's in. You know, it's got these 3 doorways, and this was pretty labor intensive here. Took more time, a little more tedious, but you can see it appears to be right in the center, you know, by these little corners kicking out symmetrically. Now down towards the end, it appears less symmetrical. It still appears centered, but this is a 32-inch door and this is a 30-inch door. So you see it kind of stops a little short down there, and this one, that white square, extends a little further. That's the 2 inches. They're just 2 different doors. Okay, here's that last bit of metal, and it's going into the dining kitchen transition area. This is really what this whole project was about, is giving me some tile here. That kitchen carpet was wearing out so quickly, and because this is a traffic area, high traffic area, and where I like to perch. So you know, that kitchen carpet is gone. Goodbye. But this long piece of metal here, of course, it bows. You're never going to get a straight piece, and you know, don't expect it to be straight. So you know, I'm checking it each time I nail down, you know, every other section. I'll measure, tack a nail, and skip to the other side. And for the entry into the kitchen, you see I have the metal placed here. I wanted to get as much space as I can from that corner to over there, because the carpet, the closer you got over here, was more worn, because that bottleneck really did have a lot of traffic, and I wanted more distance here. You know, visually and aesthetically, this is the more correct place to have that metal, I believe. But it doesn't look bad. Before I put the pad down, that's what that miter looks like, all set up. You see how it's crossed over? I lowered it here, but then on the lip or the ear, I pulled it up a little bit so I could get the carpet under there. But yeah, it's all crossed up, and we'll see how that turns out. I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, there's that corner joint, miter joint, and the side wall the side piece has been hammered down, because remember, it was the underside folded over there. And now we're going in for the final hammering, and we're going to see if that makes for a good miter or not. Pretty darn close. Let me tap it with this nail setter. The one is on top of the other, but it's darn close. Now I think it just seated down there. Pretty good. Pretty good. I'm liking it. They did. They butted up. The one isn't riding on the top. Down at the other end, it did still kind of hang over the other one, but it still looks good. I might try hitting that one more time to see if they then butt up. But yeah, I'm liking it. I'm liking it very well. Gee, you know, we did have rubber mallets for these back some 43 years ago when I was a 16-year-old kid laying carpet. It was in Vegas, mostly over a summer, and man, I learned a lot during that time. We laid a lot of carpet, and you know, I was just at the apprentice level, but by the end of that summer, you know, I was fully confident to lay carpet, and not so much linoleum or tile. We didn't do a whole bunch of that, but carpet, oh yeah. But you know, later as an adult, you know, tile, there's no real mystery to it. It's a floor covering. But hammering with this rubber mallet, it brought back the memory. You know, normally we humans think in words and we remember in pictures, but also sounds. After hammering this, I recalled, oh yeah, we did have rubber mallets for metal, but I hadn't remembered that until I started whacking this stuff with the rubber mallet, and the sound brought that memory back. Okay, and this is what I'm using, some vinyl caulking. It's not silicone, you know. This is more like the material the tile is made up of. It's just, I guess, like older school type caulking. You see so much of the silicone around, but I just nipped the tip of this, and this is where that crack from the nail in the metal, behind the metal there, the nail, you know, through this crack out here, and this is my solution for that. I'm just going to put a little bit of that in there and just press it down in, and it hides it pretty well, I think. So, and also on some of these tiles here, on the black, you know, the 4 square foot tiles bundled together in these color blocks, you know, the black sections don't show the lines between the tiles, but on some of these blocks of the white, you see it a lot more. So in some places where, you know, the gap is a little greater, you know, some of them butt up pretty nice, but this isn't really one that I would normally do. But just adding some of this down there and letting it dry, and then I'll come back with a Scotch-Brite pad after it's dry, just to buff out any residue that's left. But yeah, sneaky way to kind of cover some of those gaps, and maybe in some of these points at the corner points there might be a little gap that you can kind of fill in a little. And this Goo Gone gets up the any residual glue on the tile quite well. You know, sometimes I'll use a a Scotch-Brite pad as well, but the Goo Gone doesn't leave any, I don't know, scratches. It's just really effective. Okay, so the kitchen tiling is done, but the kitchen's not done itself. There's one more thing I'm going to do for the kitchen to kind of cap the kitchen area, and that is this corner guard. This cross through traffic space here is it's tight, and this takes a lot of dings and knocks, so this is getting a corner edge guard. I went into the big box store and bought it. You know, I ate the little sin of the sales tax for this thing, and actually some screws too. I got some screws. They're called lath screws. I've never used lath screws before, but you get the idea. They're for mesh and stuff. This angle is aluminum. It's only a 1/16 inch thick, and the legs are 1 1/4 inches each, and that covers just where the it almost looks like sheetrock tape, about 1 1/4 inches out. You can see the outline, but this will cover that. And I was wondering, you know, if I would countersink these holes in the metal, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to seat these up with these lath screws and just, you know, embrace the look of the hardware and not try to hide it with a countersink. There's not much room to countersink here anyway, because, you know, like I said, it's only a 1/16, and, you know, sometimes a screw in a countersink, if it's not set directly in, you know, it'll ride up on one corner. So, you know, that can be, you can try too hard to hide it and it just looks worse. But this is what it's going to be like. And I've alternated the sides so it's kind of offset in that way. But other than that, I'm going to dab some clear silicone adhesive, you know, nothing too aggressive, but otherwise I'm going to drive them in, and, you know, you can set these clutches. See, I don't want to pull too hard with the screw because there's metal behind it. Let me show you down below what I'll be actually tapping into. You see that? That's metal behind there, and you know, if I put too much pulling tension on those screws, you know, that could disrupt things down there, and it's like that all the way up. There's no, we're not going into wood, we're going into that corner of metal there, and it's thin and there's just plaster over it. So that's the plan. Just gonna put a light tension on the clutch of the drill and be done with it. And so there it is, edge guard, and I like it. You know, I don't mind the look of the screws showing. I mean, the industrial look is in now anyway, so it's functional and it's cool too. Hello, Christian Livingstone here again, and I'm just now getting around to recapping this floor covering project. It went well, it was fun, and if I didn't mention it already, the landlord waived a month of the rent, you know, for covering the cost of the materials. I didn't ask him, you know, to do that, but he did. I figured he would. I think we talked about the materials cost. It was about $500, and that was cheap. There was probably 120 square feet, I think, between those three spaces. The kitchen being the largest, I think that was probably about 100. And so there's the entryway. Turned out well, kind of fun and interesting. Goes along well with the kitchen, I think, too. You know, the same diagonal lines and right angles. And I made that vent there too to kind of go along with the aluminum corner guards, and it kind of matches my coffee table too. I put some expanded metal on that, and it's one of my favorite materials, expanded metal. Diamond plate as well, but aluminum too. Aluminum's a new material for me in TIG welding. You know, I've only had my AC TIG welder for about 4 years, and I'm always kind of looking for projects to make things out of aluminum. So this was one, and here it is, the kitchen. If I turn on the fluorescent lights, I don't know if it throws it a cast yellow or not. Sometimes it does, but yeah, turned out well. And there it is, the white going down the hall, the black centered in the kitchen. And there's the laundry room, much the same, you know, blah, blah, blah. A little thread I was kind of trying to spin through this is the political correctness lately. Apparently there's a move by the establishment, the state, the left, to come up with some pronouns for people that are non-gendered. Okay, and let's take a look at this video clip.
You're gonna give me my fucking money back.
Excuse me, sir. There's a young man in here.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
I can call the police if you'd like me to. You need to settle down.
You need to settle down and mind your business, okay? Ma'am, once again, ma'am.
I said both of you.
No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am.
I actually said both of you guys. It was general.
Right beforehand, you fucking said sir.
Sir? Okay.
Motherfucker, take it outside.
It's very nearly in an assaultive state right now.
Motherfucker.
I apologize now.
And a little property destruction, private property.
You're gonna call them and talk about how it's misgendered several times in the store.
Misgendered? No. He's asking to be misgendered, and people are not complying with his demand. But he wants to obviously be referred to in the feminine pronouns, and it's going to be tough, boy.
Corporate number now. Get it for me now.
See, he's holding himself hostage now.
Well, I'm going to ask you for the 5th time to stop calling me a man.
Demanding the ransom.
I'm not.
You gotta call me, or I'm gonna call your boss.
Yes, get it for me now. Get it for me now. I'm not cussing. I'm not cussing. Get me the damn number now, please. Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah. Dangerous.
No, you're just going to keep bumping the drum.
But see, and he's undoubtedly having a sense of being justified in this.
You're going to lose money over this. You're going to give me my fucking money back.
So yeah, you know, it's not uncommon for people to hold themselves hostage and demand a ransom of sorts. His was for the pronouns, and he wasn't getting his way, so he had then trafficked in the irrational thinking style of demanding this. They must treat me or talk to me in a way that I prefer. And they have to, they should, they've got to, they need to. And, you know, those are the words that usually go along with the thinking style demanding this. But then after that, he didn't get his demand. He trafficked in the condemning, damning, blaming, and you know, further demanding a ransom, and then the phone number, and you know, having the retaliation of the LGBT community. I don't know if they want to picket the store or something, because you know, they didn't call him the pronoun he liked. But the interesting thing, even Jordan Peterson hasn't brought this up about, you know, how some of these trans people try to play the victim card so much, but there's a flaw in the idea that I think most people in general have it. It's not just the trans people. When it comes to victimhood, and I'm talking about the emotional upsettedness that we're seeing in this guy. Where did it come from? Was it that poor little guy behind the counter that made this guy upset? He would think so. The guy in drag there would think, oh yeah, he made me mad. But does it look like that guy behind the counter has the superpower of being able to remotely cause that larger guy in drag to get that upset? Does that guy behind the counter look like he has the power to control this guy's emotion and cause him? No, that's the profound thing. Most people would say, yeah, I went to the store and, he said something I didn't like. And, I got mad, so he must have made me mad. No. It was the demandingness. They must call me by a pronoun that they don't want to use. And if they don't, they're damnable. And I'm justified in getting over upset. And every time somebody does, I'm going to let them have it. And you just see him seething in anger. And that's what it is. It's a false premise, though. Nobody, let me put it simply, nobody can insult you. Nobody can insult me. I have to choose to be insulted. I mean, it's the same thing. Offended, upset. Nobody can offend you. Nobody can upset you. Nobody can insult you. You have to take offense. You have to choose to be insulted. You have those choices. You can choose to laugh at things, even things you don't like. Somebody, if I walk into a store and, somebody wants to try to offend me, they could say, oh, look, here she comes. I could take offense, or I could just laugh at him. Those are the choices. And, this guy keeps making bad choices. I mean, it's kind of sad to see a guy going through anguish like that. So, yeah, you traffic in the irrational thinking style of demandingness and condemning and damning, and I'm not saying that, you shouldn't have, somewhat negative emotive outcomes when you're, having things happen, not to your body, but things people say. I mean, you can give back some, reciprocate with some negative feedback. If somebody's trying to be lippy with you, you can give them some sass back. That's not what we're talking about. This guy is over upsetted. He is making cognitive choices that have way exaggerated emotive outcomes, and then even the behavioral stuff. You see him kicking the private property and very nearly coming over that counter and clobbering that poor kid behind the counter there. So yeah. And, just putting on a couple of traces of that pink clothing, really doesn't pull it off too well either. I mean, sadly, it's just. But this gal over here.
Excuse me, sir. There's a young man in here. Watching out.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
Listen.
It is ma'am.
I can call the police if you'd like me to. You need to settle down.
You need to.
See, she's offering up some demand that you need to settle down, and then he puts it back on her. You need, So yeah, need. I recently went into the supermarket, and there was a big school bus out front. It had a banner, "Fill the bus" or something. I rolled in on this thing, and a couple of gals were in the entry area with the tables set up, and I spotted the little flyer, and there was another gal with them who was standing kind of passing out flyers to anybody who wanted them, but the topic was rape, which is a nasty topic, and it's a bad topic, and it's usually the man that's the perpetrator. So, but I was kind of shameless. I just rolled up and started flirting with the girls and asking, hey, what's this about, blah, 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 and And the other gal that was handing out the flyers, she saw me talking and trying to kind of elicit a little information and a little feedback, and she kind of abruptly puts a pamphlet. It's about this and this and this, and I thought, oh, I sense a little hostility, like, man, bad, rape is the topic, and I'm the potential perpetrator, so I didn't appreciate that so much. But what I did was I gave a little negative feedback myself. I'm not trying to antagonize anybody, but I kind of had fun with it too. I said, yeah, I'm always worried, a little worried about getting raped myself, maybe by some hard-up lesbians, but I'm not sure I would resist. And then I just started to roll away. and I told the other gals at the table, I said, I'm just joking. So, I made a little fun of it, but it gets down to some of this stuff lately about, the left and the state trying to come up with these pronouns, that they want you to use, these, like you got to call a transgender person, in a male gender or a neuter gender. I don't know. It's pretty odd. And I don't think I'd ever do that. I mean, not that I have any hostility towards, homosexual people, gay people, lesbian people, trans people. That seems to be the big one, is they want you to call the trans people a different gender. I don't think homosexuals or lesbians, expect you to do that, call them by an opposite gender. But for the trans people, they want, everybody to call them something that they're not. I mean, you're given a gender at birth, and you don't transition to another one or transition back to your old one. It's not reality. But, I suppose, I've changed my name myself, not to a different gendered name, but without going to the state for permission. I'm not a U.S. citizen, and I'm a stateless person, a Christian anarchist, and I've changed my name. And I suppose, the example of Bradley Manning, I have respect for that guy in how he exposed the atrocities being committed by the U.S. military overseas, especially in the Middle East there. And he released that information, and it cost him a great deal. And he went to federal prison, and, they commuted the sentence, let him go a little earlier than they might have. But he's in jail again now for subpoena. He wouldn't testify, and that's just another crime of the state, trying to force people to talk when they don't want to, and he didn't want to, and so he's in contempt of court, no trial or anything. They just hold you in jail until, the grand jury's over, or whatever it is. And, but he apparently was a homosexual guy, in the U.S. military, and he gets out of prison finally, and he was working with that Glenn Greenwald guy, another gay guy, but journalists, and with integrity. And so, I hand it to those guys. They're on the front line of, in some ways, I think my way's better, just, separating from the state. But I do. I think what they're doing is pretty good. And so this guy, Bradley Manning, changes his name to, Chelsea Manning. And, if that's the only name he's going to use, like I have changed my name. It's the only name I have or use, and it's been that way for nearly 25 years. And, I would call a guy like Bradley Manning Chelsea Manning if that's the name he uses. Whether he went to the state for permission to change his name or not, I presume he did. I presume he, went to a court and said, please, master, can I be called Chelsea now, and can that show up on state ID and stuff? Undoubtedly, that's what he did. So I would call somebody that, or I myself would be a hypocrite if I didn't, because, like I said, I've changed my name, not through the state, but just by practice. So yeah, I would call somebody like Chelsea Manning, but I would refer, with the pronouns, as, her, she. I wouldn't use those. That would be lying, So other than that, a lot of hostility about us white guys, now it's called masculinity is toxic masculinity, it seems. They're trying to pair those concepts together. And, white privilege, it's like, or straight guy, white, male, straight, and, conservative, religious. Oh, that's like a walking hostile environment, it's really ridiculous. But that seems to be the trend lately with changing the pronouns, and there's a lot of hatred by the left. They're, in the name of diversity and tolerance, they're firing out these almost death threats at like those Covington boys, those teenage kids on a field trip out there to the district of criminals. They're minding their own business, and these leftists come and try to antagonize these kids, and these kids were acting like perfect gentlemen, but they took out a clip and made it seem like the kids might have been antagonizing the poor old leftists who were antagonizing them and hurling insults. And but then the greater context of the video came out, and it was quite the opposite. But all the leftist media and a lot of politicians and corporations, and even the kids, the kids as bishop, they were a Catholic group and school on a field trip, and even their own bishop condemned the boys wrongly, and then he found out no, the boys were acting like perfect gentlemen. And but see, they are so quick to want to almost issue death threats to children because they're white, they're conservative, they're male, and so there's a cultural battle seemingly coming on, and that's just another piece of the puzzle. So that's kind of where I stand. I'm not going to use misgendered pronouns to make the little snowflakes happy. I'm just not. If somebody changes their name and it's a girly name, okay, I'll go for that. If that's your one and only name, It now occurs to me that I actually was in almost the exact same circumstance as this guy behind the counter. It was in Las Vegas. I was working at a 7-Eleven store in the early 80s. I was in my early 20s at the time, and it was on a graveyard shift. Nobody else was in the store, and this black guy comes in, and he's in full drag. I mean, and he was about 6'3", and he had a wig on and a fur coat on, maybe even high heels. And I don't know what I said or did, but he got offended. I don't know. I might have just been grinning at his look. It was kind of caught me off guard, but. Yeah, he got a little hostile with me, not quite as much as this guy here, but very, very similar. And so, yeah, it is. I just recalled that. It had been, it's been 40 years, but that happened. And this black guy had undoubtedly gotten some hormone treatments or something, because he had this halter-like top, and these boobs were sagging down, and that kind of blew me away. Holy mackerel! He looked like an NBA basketball player, all in drag, But so my impression was that he was some kind of a prostitute. So yeah, that's just a little feature there, but maybe I'll actually bring up this Jordan Peterson so you guys get an idea of where he's coming from.
Bill C-16 purported to do nothing but extend human rights provisions to an excluded group, let's say, to the transgender and non-gender binary types, and that was the federal legislation. It also made it a hate crime to discriminate or harass, essentially. So now then the question is, well, what exactly do you mean by discriminate or harass? And why exactly is that a hate crime under the criminal code? Well, there was an answer to that. The answer was, well, this bill will be interpreted in light of the policies generated by the Ontario Human Rights Commission, very large set of policies. Now, the Ontario Human Rights Commission is a radically leftist organization. I think it's the most dangerous organization in Canada, although you could debate that. And they set all sorts of policies about how this legislation was going to be interpreted, and the federal government linked to their website to state that Bill C-16 would be interpreted in light of those guidelines. So I went and read all the policies. Well, one of the policies was that if you didn't use the preferred pronouns of a given group, that you could be charged essentially with a hate crime. And I thought, no,
Which
that's
given
not.
group is that? You're talking about transgender people.
Yeah, and so there's all these pronouns that have come up. There's 70 different sets of pronouns approximately to hypothetically describe people who don't fit anywhere on the gender spectrum, which is also something that I don't really understand. I don't understand that conceptually. Like,
We'll come to that. But I
yeah,
just
but
want
the
to hear
point
the
is,
story of this bill
well,
first.
okay, so now a person is compelled under Canadian law to use the pronoun of another individual's choice on pain of law. And I thought, well, no, that's not acceptable. It's one thing to put limits on what a person can't say, like say with hate speech laws, which I also don't agree with, by the way, but that's a different argument. I think it's a narrower argument. But to compel me to use a certain content when I'm formulating my thoughts or my actions under threat of legislative action, I thought, no, what's happened there is the government has introduced compelled speech legislation into the private sphere. It's never happened in the history of English common law. And so I said, there's no way I'm abiding by that. I don't care what your damn rationale is. We're compassionate. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're playing this radical collectivist left-wing game. You're trying to gain linguistic supremacy in the area of public discourse. You're doing that using compassion as a guise, and you're pulling the wool over people's eyes. And you're not going to do it with me.
If I was sitting here in front of you as a transgendered male to female or female to male, and we began the conversation, at the beginning of the conversation you stumbled and called me he or she, and I was perhaps identifying the other way around. And then if I'd said to you, please, I'd rather go by she, how would you respond to that on a personal level? How would you
Well, it would depend on the situation, but the way I have responded to that, because I've had a number of conversations with transgendered individuals, is that I use whatever pronoun seems to go along with the persona that they're projecting publicly. It's the simplest thing to do. Now, if we were...
So you would respect their choice on an individual level?
Yeah. But with a more contentious pronouns, je and je, and that sort of thing, that's a whole different issue. Because the question there is, well, exactly what is it that you're doing when you're asking me to use those words? Like, are you compelling me to play your particular ideological game, or is this actually a matter of some personal identity that's important to you? And those things are not obvious. And so in a situation like that, the first thing I'd have to do is to try to figure out just exactly what was going on in the situation, and that's not simple. And so there would be no foregone conclusion that I would address you by the pronouns of your choice. And the first thing I'd want to find out is that just a narcissistic power play?
Here's another clip I think would be fitting for this tail end of this video. It has to do with, the state compelled speech or prohibited speech, and this is a UFC little banter between these guys. They're going to fight for the championship here. It's already done, but there's a lot of banter and trash talk at these press conferences, and but a reporter in the audience offers up a question to Dana White, the UFC president, on let me scrub through here a little bit.
How the hell did that guy do? They're like, whoa, what's that? What? Are you doing that against the great stuff? Need to throw a haymaker. Just like this in your
Usman beat Woodley, the champion, pretty soundly, but I believe the reporter's question's going to come up here in a second.
Oh, it's you again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What do you got now?
Dana, at the Nevada Commission hearing on Tuesday, the commissioner said that they could start possibly sanctioning fighters for things that they say before fights and looking at the fights, I guess, in response to the McGregor and Khabib stuff. Just want to get your thoughts on that. Can they do that?
I think it's crazy. I think it's insane. I think it's unconstitutional, first of all. I don't think you can legally do that. These guys get into a cage and they punch each other in the face. They can knock each other unconscious. They can choke each other, but they can't say mean things to each other. It's pretty ridiculous.
again, we're given one gender at birth, and you don't get to change it and then come back to your old gender, or get changed into, I want to be referred to as livestock now, or a goat. No, you don't get goat DNA. No, you don't get female DNA. You get male, female. I suppose, except for semen. I think semen is non-gendered. A point I want to make that goes along with some of these things, about white privilege and some hypocrisy behind some of that stuff. There was an RT article today that Jussie Smollett guy, Hollywood actor, famous celebrity, black guy, gay guy, and he made these false hoaxes about racist and homophobic threats being made at him. He actually sent a letter to himself with threats, that were purported to be Trump supporters, and had a crushed up aspirin in the envelope to make it look like a sarin attack, some kind of a chemical or biological agent in it. But apparently that didn't get enough traction for him, so then he hired a couple of his buddies to stage something, and he scratched up his face or something, and said that he was mugged by some Trump supporters, some white guys, some anti-gay people, but it was all a fraud. And there was a grand jury, and he was indicted, but apparently he's been let go. And it was kind of funny how some of the comments point out that hypocrisy. He gets a pass because he's got all these things going for him, and if I did something much less, much worse, or more trivial, I should say, I undoubtedly wouldn't get a pass. But and I like some of these comments here. He's got leftist. This is leftist privilege in action. So yeah, the left is often saying anything that white people have, it's because of their white privilege, not their hard work. And so here's a guy who's got he's got all these successes, wealth, celebrity status, a popular TV show that he's on, I guess, and he's out here trying to throw bad light on conservatives, white people, and it was all a lie. And you or I would probably get much harsher treatment than he is. And but I mean, honestly, as a libertarian thinker and a Christian anarchist, of course, I can see that this is it's a victimless crime. Nobody is a victim here. It was a fraud, and but still, it shows the bias and the fraud that is perpetrated by not just Hollywood, but the media. And this guy gets a pass from the prosecutors there in Chicago. So I know it's kind of a negative point. I mean, this video started out on vinyl tile floor covering, and this is just the way this one's ending. But maybe if you want to stick around for the next one, I'll keep it a lot lighter, and it's going to be interesting and a fun project for me, and maybe somebody else out there will find it interesting. But melon garden. I've done a big melon garden in the past, but I've recently moved, and I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do another one a little differently. This, I'm going to put down the plastic, and but I'm going to put the drip lines, soaker lines underneath the plastic to conserve on the waters. Because at the old place, I had a well and I could splash around the water at no cost. But where I'm at now is a little different, so I can't be so generous with the water. So I'm just going to put a drip system under the plastic, and I think it'll be great. Okay, so thanks for sticking around, and maybe we'll catch you next time. Okay.